Okay, so we're going to the main event of the evening, and we got a great panel. So we're going to talk about cloud, and everybody thinks it's, you know, cloud. But believe me, you don't know cloud. These are the people who really are the practitioners. They purchase the services, they live in it, they have to develop business applications, they have to satisfy business needs. These are some pretty heavy hitters, and I'm so proud to have this team on the panel tonight. And we're very pleased to have Ben Gallo, who's going to be our moderator, who stepped in the last minute, so I do appreciate that, but of course from Expedient. And most of the panel members, I think, are Expedient clients, which is super good, or some of them are, that's for sure. So Ben, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can run it and introduce the folks on the panel. Thank you so much.
Great. We have a lot of panelists. Panel guests, come up and join us, please. Simon ruined my joke saying I was from the speed. I was going to say he grabbed me off the street as I was walking by.
Exactly.
And which?
Unfortunately, we have to stick with.
Oh, one. All right.
Well, there's a trick. You can potentially use two. You just have to turn
Same
yours
channel.
on when they're talking.
How do we do that? How do we do that?
Onto this.
Which is, yeah, that's
I'm not
it.
sure it's going to work.
They can't be on the same
I was
time.
on at the same time. Okay. All right. We're gonna try this. I'm gonna have the panelists introduce themselves, and I'm going to go silent as Todd begins. Thank you.
Right, am I on? No.
You're probably better off just
Using the
sharing.
one. All right, here we go. We're on.
All right, I was told to hold the microphone like this if it was.
Don't do this.
Yeah.
Just.
And nothing on the end here. First of all, I want to applaud the ASU students, both for being here tonight and Dan for bringing them here. Usually Wednesday nights, I spend with a group of 16, 17-year-old young men in a mentoring situation. So when I got the call from Sean and said, hey, can you step in here? I said, I need to make sure somebody else covers what we've got going on with these young men. But even better to be with this group and to see those who are, you know, either working at Target or doing the gig online. And I want to take just a second and applaud them as well. So Todd, I'll go ahead. And I am Todd Johnson. I work at the University of Phoenix. I've been there for about 12 years. Prior to that, I spent what felt like a lifetime with Intel and a few years with Honeywell before that, but happy to be here tonight.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, Brad Lantz, and I'm not sure I'm supposed to be on this panel. I heard practitioner, and I'm probably not.
I work with.
Yeah, but I know where to find practitioner, which is really my role. So I'm the Chief Information Officer for Copper Point. Copper Point is a Western regional insurance company, mostly workers' compensation, but then we write other commercial lines as well. I've been in the insurance industry overall for probably about 18 years, and was right out of high school before that. Just kidding. So happy to be here tonight. Looking forward to the discussion. My name is Jeff Subson. I'm CIO of Packet Watch. We're a cybersecurity firm here in Scottsdale. Coming up on my year anniversary of Packet Watch. Before that, I was 15 years in healthcare here in the Valley, and then before that, about 12 years in logistics.
Thank you. Paul Wernes, Director of Public Services, we're rebranding. We used to be the second largest waste and trash hauler in the U.S. We're now moving into the environmental solutions and services space, but with blue trucks. So you can see it's been with the organization I'm going on 21 years. Started off Allied Waste and through acquisition and so forth, and up at Public Services. But very excited to have some in the panel today.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
We were using one today.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately.
real quick about myself. So Ben Gallo with Expedient. I've been with Expedient for about a year now. Before that, I spent 7 years running 3 separate technology investment-backed companies, and came out of that without losing too much of my own money. So I call that a success. And then before that, 15 years at a couple of different large IT services companies, and I wore an engineering badge for the first 6 years of my career, but if I get super technical, I'm still trying to find those brain cells today. So one plug for Sim. So I'm actually not a native of Arizona. I'm out of Portland, Oregon. Been a member of SIM there since 2004.
No, come
For SIM and for RLF, most of the people that brought me into SIM way back then are now retired. And the people that we brought into SIM, starting as guests, and many of them who went through the RLF program are now the technology leaders in the Portland market today. So it's been really fun for me to watch those people come up through the program and continue to network. And most of their jobs came through networking with this group, which is phenomenal. So great look there. All right. So the topic at hand, I was given a couple of topics. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, try to make this interesting. And we've got a great, I think, a bunch of different views from the panelists up here. So excited to see where this conversation takes us. So the overall topic was cloud, which is one of those fun overused words. And for tonight, I think we're going to define cloud as really not so much a thing or a place, but really an operating model, right? And it comes back to that age-old story with organizations is, do we build it ourselves or do we go buy it from somebody that already has invested in hopefully a better, more optimized service infrastructure, whatever it is that we're looking for. And I think all of us are in those challenges today where we're trying to make our business more competitive. We're trying to meet the demands of where the business wants to go. A lot of times, us in IT are the last ones to find out about a business decision that was made. So hopefully we've worked to build a place at the table, but really make our business more competitive at the same time, getting efficiencies out of our current organization, and reduce cost at the same time, improving things, which sometimes seems a little bit at battle with each other. We now have this fun thing with trying to hire folks and now trying to make that decision of, do we hire, do we buy? And at the same time, when do we use that outsourced service or software as a service or cloud service or infrastructure service, whatever it may be, versus when do we hire from within and try to build that as an internal skill set? So I guess why don't we start the conversation with the topic of what are you doing or how do you make sure that you are staying ahead of the technology curve and making your business more innovative and to support where the business is going? We're going to start with that. Paul, does someone want to start with that question first? As a doozy. Anyone? All right.
I always go first, because that way everybody's going to forget what I say. No, so let me give you a little background of where we are, I guess, a little bit on our cloud journey, and it may help to resonate. So we've probably for the last year been on a significant cloud journey in that we're moving all of our what we call core platforms, so billing, claims, policy, like the main systems that run our business into the cloud, right? And I think the question that's being asked is, well, why do you do that? How do we make that decision? And a lot of it came down to when we started to look at CopperPoint has been through 2 acquisitions. We're going to continue through acquisitions. So one of the reasons I joined the company, there was a need to help. How do we improve the agility of working through acquisitions? So how do we move faster? How do we be able to make an acquisition and get the most out of that acquisition as quickly as possible? So it was really, for us, the cloud was about agility. If you go back just a year ago, we spent almost 6 months trying to incorporate just an upgrade to our core platform, right? And now moving into the cloud, those upgrades will happen just as part of being on the cloud. And now our team can focus on business value, right? How do we make our agents, our producers more effective? How do we provide new capabilities to our policyholders? How do we differentiate the business? That's where my team adds a lot of value because they understand the business. So they can add value there, not figuring out how do we make sure that we stay on the latest version of Windows? How do we upgrade the database because we're going to be out of compliance? Those kinds of things really don't add value. They're just table stakes for us. So for us, that was really a lot of the driver of moving to the cloud, and it helps with the overall culture shift that we're trying to make from just moving to agile practices, DevOps, those kinds of things. It really supports all of that.
Let me put a couple exclamation points on what Brad started there. When we engaged with Expedient, I think we're going on either year 3 or year 4 with Expedient. When we just before we started that journey, we operated 4 of our own proprietary data centers. The power bill alone on those data centers was just staggering, in the millions. And then you add on top of that all the overhead that Brad just went through and articulated. You have to think about refresh on all that hardware. If you need a new machine, and thinking about the 4 to 6 week lead time just to get the piece of hardware in, and then you have to put an operating system on it, and then you got to cable it up, and you got to power it up, and you got to make sure cooling and all of the other network components with that. And in that journey to the cloud, we now we still have about 8 cabinets full of hardware. We started with about 20,000 servers. So we have 8 cabinets in a proprietary location here in Phoenix. I'm sorry, in a co-location here in Phoenix. And then everything else is either on what we call EC, so that's Expedient's Elastic Cloud, AWS, or Azure. And they take care of all of the networking components. They take care of all the operating systems. They keep all the systems healthy. Any of the hardware refresh that would be associated with that, that's on them, and we can concentrate on our core business and what we need to focus on. And it's not necessarily all of that kind of overhead that goes with maintaining your own data center. And there's still some reasons why we may keep some of those 8 cabinets that are left around, but it would be very, very niche work versus the preponderance of everything we do is either infrastructure as a service, or a lot of the software that we're operating now. While we will write a lot of the integrations there and deal with a lot of the data components, the kind of the core classroom for us is run by Blackboard Ultra, rather than us trying to create our own classroom LMS environment.
So I would say that as an organization, you're constantly battling for resources and your time and attention on where to spend it. You can spend a lot of time, energy, and resources on just keeping the lights on. So it's significant effort to stop pointing out. So that's a nice, appealing attribute of the cloud, is you can offload all of that and then focus on what you really bring as far as value to your company. I kind of come at it from a little bit different position, is looking at the cloud as a software development platform. If you look at the innovations available in the cloud versus what it would take to build out on-prem or to staff the expertise and just find the IT expertise to manage those systems, it's a daunting task to do that. So the cloud gives you this freedom to innovate. And I think the question was something about staying current with the cloud offerings, where you have to give your teams the ability to innovate. You have to let them try new technologies. You have to give them the budget and freedom to do that in order to stay current.
And just, we're very similar to a lot of things you've already heard. We're underway right now on probably the first kind of stage of our kind of core refresh and core apps. We've moved to Workday. We just moved to Oracle from a financial perspective. We're kind of continuing to look at SaaS, especially for those kind of core services, where we kind of differentiate. Well, it's somewhat similar, especially when you start doing custom development. That's when we look in AWS, Azure. We have a couple of products or areas where you're just not going to find something off the shelf. And that's where we really get into that custom development. We really, again, spend a lot of time in AWS. The other piece, though, we do have multiple co-locations. We do have an old system that we are in the process of replacing, and that'll take several years. But we do not have a directive to just exit the co. So we are continuing, and we'll continue to have quite a bit of presence in our co-los. But I think for us, we take each kind of situation, from a strategy perspective, what makes sense for our company. Could be SaaS, could be on-prem, could be PaaS, IaaS. But we pretty much kind of take a look at it kind of from a strategic perspective and kind of where does that fit in. We are maybe more cloud ready than the good old cloud first. I would say we're definitely tied in. If it's tied, we're going to go to the cloud, right? Because some of the benefits are once discussed, right? No one likes to do the patching, hardware refreshing. Let's put our people where we want them to be, where we get some value. There's not as much value in kind of some of those maybe mundane type level tasks. Let's get those, off, maybe SaaS, et cetera. So, but very similar story.
So, kind of pick into some of these topics here. So from what it sounds like, a lot of you are leveraging quite a few service providers in your organizations. How do you think the fact that we've gone from really managing everything ourselves, now we've got service providers that have really permeated our entire organization, where you're managing partners, service providers, where before you were just really just managing your own applications, your own infrastructure. How do you think that's changed your job and the jobs of your teams from the days of our own monolithic infrastructures?
Once again, I'm gonna build on something Brad said earlier, and he talked about DevOps. So you guys study that at ASU, DevOps. It's really, really interesting because we used to have silos in Tower. We had a networking organization, and we had software engineering, and all the hosting, infrastructure, all the standard components. Now switching to that DevOps model, we have 40 agile teams. We call them 2 pizza teams. So you can feed that team with 2 pizzas. I didn't invent that. Somebody else did. Maybe somebody smarter on the panel quote exactly where that came from. But these 2 pizza teams, and they have, while they have some level of expertise, I think in some areas, we try to make them fairly generic as possible. Full stack engineers, and they own everything from provisioning their hardware to developing and writing code. You need the integrations, you need the data that's associated with that. And if something breaks in the middle of the night, there's not a support team that's called. It's whoever's on their team that has the on-call rotation, and it may take the whole team to get up in the middle of the night and fix something. But that also puts the accountability and the responsibility where it needs to be, because we won't release code until it's ready for prime time into the environment. And that whole DevOps model has really changed where we have come from even just 2 or 3 years ago. And it's a really dynamic and challenging environment to the point where the retention with our software engineers has been really, really strong. We're in very small single-digit attrition rates. We might see more of that as especially as more companies shift to that DevOps model and have that similar challenging type of environment. But we've been able to retain the talent as well as become much more efficient in how we work at the cloud.
How's my job different? Well, I can remember when I was getting my MBA, I was sitting in my business law class going, when would I ever use this? And now I can. So, I think what's really the dynamic that's really changed from my perspective is contracts, service level agreements, service level objectives. When it's an internal team, you can kind of, we have personal goals, and you just kind of rally around and you get things done. But when you are working with an external party to accomplish something, you have to be very clear in the contract. Here's what you're responsible for, here's what we're responsible for. And nobody likes contracts, but when things go wrong, that's where everybody goes back to. Well, was it in the contract or not? So I think it forces a lot more discipline around how you think about projects, who's really going to be accountable for what. You really have to spell that out. And I think as somebody on the company side, you have to recognize you always come into that at a deficit. You're always at a deficit because you're talking to a vendor who's done this 16 times, and they're coming to you who's never done it before, and you're going to them for their expertise, right? So you always come in at a deficit, not knowing necessarily what could go wrong, and they've done it a bunch of times, and they know all the things that could go wrong, and they've covered all that. So it's really much more about thinking through the process and making sure that you've got good expectations outlined. And then ultimately, we're responsible for, I look at it as always, if a project goes bad, our CEO is looking at me. And I can't step aside and go, well, yeah, we had a Price Waterhouse and you're doing it. But it doesn't matter, right? You selected PwC, so that's on you. So you can't get out of that accountability. And so you have to think about it as it's the IT responsibility for delivery, and then you're gonna have to manage your business partners through, because as you set those expectations, with your partner, you have to manage that back with your business partners. So it gets a lot more around relationship building and expectation setting.
So coming from the healthcare sector, one of the things that how it changed my job was I gained about 40% more time back and a whole lot of focus, not having to worry about the constant threat of downtime and outages, and HIPAA breaches and HIPAA violations. In a highly regulated environment, trying to do that yourself requires a substantial effort. And the risks are high if you don't get it right. Right. And aside from all the issues with finding the right staff, with turnover, having the right technology in place, having the right programs in place, doing security well, where, as an individual company, you're probably not going to do those things very well versus someone that does it all the time. So those are all good points to move to the cloud. And when you're in the cloud and you don't have to focus on those things, you mitigate risk, you speak a lot better in management, and it helps you to focus more on the things you're really good at.
I'm going last year as it's disadvantage here.
Mix it up, Ben.
So, when everything's going well, especially when you're plowing with your vendor, so it's changed. Much more vendor, right? You're managing relationships that are outside your organization. You definitely, you got to have your contracts in place, SLAs in place. Difficulty comes in when you're dealing with Microsoft, you're dealing with the native US, you're dealing with Salesforce. There's not a lot of flexibility adjustment in those SLAs, and maybe not a whole lot of incentive, or if there is an issue, not a lot of penalty in some of those companies. But again, really got to understand the nuance inside of that, right? And then the big thing I like to point out, though, don't make assumptions. You really need to understand what's in the contract. So think of business continuity, DR. You just don't know what's behind that. Especially in Microsoft, you can't make assumptions that the data is there. Lots of nuance to that. And the other piece I would say is when everything's going great, it's great, right? You have a lot of time. You can focus on the critical pieces for your organization. But when it's, for today, for example, I'm going through this. I have an issue today. We have 3 vendors working together as well as my team trying to troubleshoot an issue, right? And all of a sudden you got multiple fingers. Back in the day, it was your DBA team pointing a finger at your network team. Well, now you got vendors involved. It's even more complex. So when it's going great, it's great. But when it's going maybe not so great, you got to really double down, and you got to really get a lot of facilitation, especially in a leadership role. It's just a lot of talking, making sure everyone's staying on point, holding everyone accountable, including the vendors.
All right, the title of my next question is #CloudFail. I'll go, and this is a dangerous question since I do have a customer up here, so we have to retire. I'll go first just to open it up in the room. So I've got two failure, we'll call them good lesson stories. I had a client who's was outsourcing firewall services, and we find out later that part of their competitive edge, they were a software as a service company, but part of their competitive edge is that they had a team that was better at debugging and setting up VPN connections to any flavor of firewall that their customers might have. And so while there was an issue, all the customer sees is application down, right? They don't care that it's their crappy firewall that's been out of maintenance for who knows how many years. And so we quickly discovered that capability was a competitive advantage for their organization, and thus we took it off the contract and moved it back to their organization. We had another customer who had a fully single-threaded application. They were an application focused just on the hospitality industry, which is very high maintenance. If anyone has ever sold to hotels or anyone in hospitality, they expect to be treated the way they treat their customers. And they moved it into our highly managed change control process for everything. And they had built a process of this very single-threaded application. They kept it up and alive by just sitting there and touching it all hours of the day, making sure this thing never went wrong. And all we did was slow them down, right? We put it into this tight change control environment, and we put tickets in between them and making the changes to keep the application running, and it destroyed their availability time as well. So I just want to say, do you all have some cloud fail stories, something that really was a lesson learned, how you changed how you either buy or architect or work with your service providers?
All right, got a brave soul. Aren't necessarily hard failed. More of a lesson learned, and gets into the dreaded vendor lock-in, right? So I mean, you got to lock in somewhere. But when you put certain eggs in certain baskets with certain vendors, right, you really put yourself in a bad position for negotiations. That has probably happened to us a couple of times, and really has kind of caused us to revisit just some strategy around vendor lock-in, portability at the cloud level. That's probably our biggest challenge that we've run into from a cloud perspective. Outages, we've been impacted in Azure. We just had a recent AWS one a couple of weeks ago. Hit us pretty hard. Those are kind of the ones we get into. But definitely the vendor lock-in, I think, is something that we really have kind of gotten bitten by over the last 4 years. That's SaaS, mostly the SaaS side, I'd say.
I actually do have a hard fail. In my previous company, we started specialty pharmacy with a startup, did quite well, and we were acquired. But we knew we had a core operating system that ran the entire pharmacy, and we knew the vendor would not support anything but bare metal. But the acquiring company insisted that we move this to the Azure cloud and run it on virtual machines. Try as I might to dissuade them from that, they went forward with it, and turns out the system would not run in a virtual environment. I've never seen that before, and it's very uncommon, but it would not run. So the entire company, after moving all of this core system, all the peripheral systems to the Azure cloud, discovered on the first day that we could not conduct business. So it was another week-long process of ordering hardware, and restocking server rooms to go back. So that's an example of an executive team making a decision, not listening to the people that actually know. And that's a huge pitfall if you don't actually trust your staff and do the full research, the devil's in the details. You can get hit hard if you don't pay attention to it.
Who in this room lied to Microsoft saying that SQL is running on bare metal to get support? Remember that when VMware first came out and they would not support SQL running on VMware? Is it running on pure? Oh yeah, it's bare metal. Sure it is.
Let's see. So I don't think I have I don't have a pure fail. I guess for me, probably the thing that strikes me the most, particularly in the insurance industry, a lot of the vendors have been slow to adopt the cloud. So you think about companies like Salesforce that were built for cloud, and then you think about software that we tend to run that's more nuanced for insurance, and they're more of a lift and shift, right? That software was never intended to be on the cloud. It wasn't built that way, so it's kind of a monolithic, not multi-tenant kind of app running on your cloud. So I think for us, what I found more surprising is software vendors, as they migrate to the cloud, they're finding that they're not really software vendors anymore. Now they're providers, right? They're having to do operations, which they never had to do before, and a lot of capabilities that they've never had to do before. And I've been surprised working with them just in so many cases where internally we've done things and it's brand new for them. And you're like, how do you not know you have to do this, right? So it's more just, again, being cautious as you start in with some of your partners that they're not all as far along as they'd like for you to think. Probably the person that came in with the PowerPoint telling you everything that they could do is not going to be the person that gets the call when something's not working. So it's just, that's been more for me, the lesson is just as you get into this, a lot of the vendors are not, even though cloud has been around for years and decades at this point, they're not as far along as you.
Let me let you expand on that. So as you're now evaluating new vendors, have you changed the way you evaluate how far along they are? Maybe this is a question for Todd as well, but how do you look more into how mature they are operationally versus before with feature function? Now it's okay, show me your change management, show me, et cetera, et cetera. How's that change your purchasing process?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, similar to Republic Services. I mean, we're not, hey, we're just it's 100% cloud, right? We look at every decision as what's right. It could be on-prem, it could be cloud, it could be some hybrid thereof, right? So we start there. But I would say the biggest thing it's changed for us in the purchasing process is we do a lot more of let us talk with other customers. So, give me a list of customers that are live today in my situation, weren't greenfield, so they didn't stand it up in the cloud, but they had it on-prem. Now they've migrated to the cloud. So you kind of learn to make sure how to replicate your situation and show me a customer that's done that. So if they can't, then going into it, you're going to be beginning to. Right? Thank you.
So let me talk about failures on two levels: small failures and what I'll call more large, catastrophic failures. So first of all, we embrace a lot of the small failures. We do a lot of things with what we call two-way doors. You can make a decision to go through that door, but you can back out that door pretty simple as well at very, very low risk. So anything that we are trying to implement these days is through that small experimentation. And if we fail quick, we roll back, and then what we learn, how do we move forward quickly with it? On the large failure front, well, first of all, gone are the days when we will do any type of a big bang implementation that Jeff described here. That we will have proven enough of that out. And typically, any of the software buys or even any of the infrastructure component buys that we are looking at, we will do it on a relatively small scale. Test it out, do a proof of concept. We usually have some metrics set up with that. Some of the bigger companies have some hooks in those contracts where if you meet those metrics, you just bought the whatever it is that you're testing out, which is okay as long as you agree on what those metrics are up front. But on some of the other more recent large failures, I don't know how many of you guys use down detector. Tell what's going on out there. And so you heard a couple of stories here, and I won't necessarily give anybody any black eyes, but companies that start with M and some companies that start with S. And we're dependent on them, right? There's not a lot that we can do on our own if there's something in their site that's down. But from that perspective, is what we have found is if they will get on the phone and troubleshoot with us, get their engineers with our engineers, our MTTR, so our mean time to resolution is infinitely smaller than if we have to go through a couple of hops trying to figure out what they're doing on their end, what they're finding, what they're discovering, what we're seeing. And so that's one of the things that we're writing into our SLAs with all our new contracts is when we do have a failure, because we know that there are going to be something operationally, we will just have hiccups here and there. But when we have those, we're going to measure MTTR, and we want your experts on the phone with our experts, and we're going to solve this. And every time we get that, we get resolution in minutes, not hours.
How much time do we have?
What does MTTR stand for?
Mean time to resolution.
Probably about
7 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's go here. So I think all of us have seen, our jobs, our industry, IT in general, change drastically in the last 20 years. What does it look like? We saw we've got 4 awesome graduates that we just saw up here a little bit ago. We're about to be graduates. What does that person in information technology and data technology look like in terms of skill sets? Because a lot of times it was like, hey, are you certified in storage management? Are you certified? Can you do a Cisco, et cetera, et cetera? Now it seems like there's a lot of more softer skills involved that just weren't there 15, 20 years ago, not even 10 years ago, right? So I guess, what does that successful person in technology look like today? And then how have you changed your hiring practices to find those people? Because it doesn't say on a resume, hey, I'm good at resolving issues between 4 different cloud vendors in my own security team and fighting management at the same time, right? It's a lot harder to find some of those softer characteristics.
So we use it on the software side of it. We use a tool called Predictive Index. So if any of you are familiar with PI, and we're not necessarily saying it has to be a particular profile, but as we put teams together, We're ensuring that people know how to work with others who have different PIs than themselves. The other piece of that in terms of, we really want problem solvers, critical thinkers, who can get on the phone and march back through the code or look through the network connections and say, where's the problem versus guessing like, okay, what change was done recently? But, okay, yeah, we'll look at the changes, but let's look at the code. Let's look at the underlying foundations. So those individuals with those critical thinking skills, with those problem solving skills, and obviously can communicate and have all of the software components that we can tell how they work with one another through that PI index is very, very helpful for us.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I was impressed, a couple, if not more, of the students tonight immediately said, hey, I'm really good talking with business and technology. And I think that's key. Gone are the days of, hey, I can just be in my queue all by myself, just hammering out code. And that's going to, I mean, that still occurs, but it's a limited number of roles with a limited run from a career perspective. So I think it's great that already people are recognizing, hey, I need to have that ability to translate. Because for me, where people demonstrate the most value is having that technology background, staying up on everything that's changing all the time, and being able to sit down with somebody in the business and say, look, I know this is how you do claims today, but have you thought about how we could leverage digital payments? Have you thought about this? You know, that's where you can connect your business acumen and the technology side to come up with solutions for them. That's way more powerful than they're going to come up with on their own. So I was impressed to hear that. I would definitely, say continue to focus on that because I think that's what we should be the longest run from a career perspective.
So I look for a couple of specific personality traits when I look at new hires. I look first and foremost what kind of character they have. Their work ethic, they're honest, trustworthy. Second is, do they have a natural curiosity and passion for the subject matter? You're not very often going to find the exact specific skill set you're looking for in experience, but if someone is naturally curious and has a passion for it and they can learn and teach themselves, you're not going to have an issue. Don't pick up whatever technology you have. They'll be able to assimilate anything that comes out. And that's going to be a constant changing battle. And nothing stays the same year to year. So if you don't have that as part of your makeup, you're probably not going to do very well. You're constantly doing this. So if you can learn and teach yourself and have a system for learning new things, and you have a passion for it, I think you do well.
These guys covered it pretty well. You're asking for sure, right? You want something that's gonna really look for those opportunities. I mean, that's really what separates a lot of folks, right? When we look at teams, you're gonna have some diversity across the team, combined, that composite spring of different views, thoughts, approaches, etc. Right? But curiosity really sets the folks that have those traits. It's definitely a different type of bar than some of the folks that don't have those traits. Right? And you guys are coming out of school, right? Hey, your learning's done. Not so fast, right? It doesn't stop, right? And that's where I also see people kind of stagnate, right? Maybe if you're at the tail end of your career, maybe then you can, potentially write it out of it. But early in your career, mid-career, right, you got to stay on top. You continue to learn. Again, those are the people that separate themselves from everybody else. And communications, at the end of the day, how they're right. You got to be able to collaborate these days. The old stereotype. I do have several stereotypes, but the one where the grouchy person who doesn't want to talk to people. You might have those occasionally, but that's very, very small amount. Right? You got to be able to work with others. You got to be able to work in the business. You got to be able to partner with your vendors. If you like to do that, then it's definitely separate yourself from others. Because again, not everyone can do that.
Great.
Thank you all very much. Thank you so much. I'm 60 in a couple of months and I learn every day, right? Have to. That's what it's about, right? And to Jeff's point, Peter is my colleague, I have to say that the passion thing is so important. When I interview for cybersecurity analysts, the first question I ask them is, do you have a home lab? Right? Because that differentiates somebody who, for them, is a passion and they want to do it even in their spare time versus it's just a day job, right? So that's great. So thanks for all those. That was absolutely super. Before we give them a round of applause, any questions for the panel? Well, they said everything you needed. Sounds like there is. So, thank you, Todd, Brad, Jeff, Paul, and particularly Ben who stepped in the last minute. So thank you so much. Can we just give them a very, very warm round of applause? Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it. So we still have room for 20 minutes, right? So the panel is still open. Okay. I encourage you to stay around, grab a drink, talk to the folks, right? How long is dessert? Dessert, exactly.